Joined by Nadim Shehadi, who works at Chatham House and the Middle East program, Irshad Manji, an author and a journalist and a fellow at Yale University, and with me here in the studios, Tariq Ramadan, who's written extensively on Islamic morality and is currently a visiting professor at Oxford University. Let me start with you, Tariq. It seems to me the consensus is that, yes, there is a right to free expression, but there's also responsibility in the way free expression is used. Do you believe that the people that are protesting accept the right to free expression?
I think so. I think that we have to understand that they feel that they have been insulted by what happened and it was a provocation. We have to ask them, and this is what we have to ask the Muslims throughout the world, to take a critical distance and to be able to understand that, yes, it may be hurtful, but you have to understand in which society and with which society you are dealing. And then there is a freedom of worship. But at the same time, it's really important to tell the people in the European societies or in the West, look, freedom of worship or freedom of speech is something that we all cherish, but there is a responsibility in the way you use it, and just try not to insult the people and not to touch the sensitivities, because here we are with people and it's out of control now.
Irshad Manji, you've been a very outspoken Islamic activist, I guess one could call it, on a number of subjects. When you first heard about these cartoons, did you imagine we would be dealing with embassies being torched around the world?
Well, first of all, Jamie, I think some would argue that I'm actually an un-Islamic activist, being a critic from within the faith. But that being said, no, I did not expect that it would lead to something like this. And in large measure, I didn't expect it because let's keep in mind that the cartoons originally appeared in the Danish newspaper in question way back in September of 2005. Jamie, it was only after a group of Danish imams took those cartoons and went to various parts of the Middle East to complain about Islamophobia and racism in Denmark that this became any kind of an issue at all. And so it seems to me that Danish Muslims themselves did not take this to be the kind of slight that should lead to violence.
All right, Nadim Shehadi, you've been quoted as saying that the extremists are using this. When you see the scenes of carnage at embassies, Western embassies, Danish embassies, do you sense this clash of civilizations maybe has more to it than people have thought up to now?
Well, I mean, the first thing to bear in mind, Jamie, is that the cartoons are offensive, and they do offend Muslims when they see them. So this is what makes them a very useful tool for agitators or extremists or people who want to create problems. So the root of the problem is the cartoons and what they say. And what's blown this out of proportion is certainly people jumping on the bandwagon and trying to exploit them and make an agitation, which I think at this stage we can safely say it's no longer about the cartoons. It's becoming more a confrontation with the West. But having said this, it is not what you call a clash of civilization in the sense that the Huntington Clash of Civilizations, because you have a debate erupting on both sides. You have Muslims saying that this has gone out of hand and that some of the things that are appearing is unacceptable. And you also have voices in the West, a debate within the West saying that freedom of speech is fine, but there are limits to it, and that there are double standards if these cartoons were anything to do with issues that are sensitive in the West.
Irshad Manji, I saw you shaking your head.
Well, in fact, the cartoons are not the root of the problem, Jamie, because if they were, then Danish Muslims themselves would have been rioting in the streets when these cartoons first appeared. It was, as I said, only after a group of imams, complained and turned this into something bigger than it needs to be in the Middle East, by the way, not in the West, that it came to this point. I would argue that the root of the problem is actually us Muslims, that we ourselves are not willing to live up to the best ideals of our holy book, the Quran. Let's remember that the Quran states that there will always be non-believers and that it's up to God, not to Muslims, to deal with them. And moreover, the Quran tells us that there is, quote, no compulsion in religion. Well, that means that nobody should be forced to treat Islamic traditions as if they are sacred.
Okay. Tariq Ramadan, the part of this that for a Westerner like myself that I always have the hardest trouble understanding boils down to the separation of religion and government. You have these protests against embassies, against governments. The Danish government had nothing to do with this. How long will it take for people in the Islamic world to understand that there is a difference between a Danish newspaper and a Danish government?
Look, it's as simple as that. The very moment these people will have freedom of speech in their own country, then we don't have dictatorships in this country. It will be understandable that there is a difference, because here everything is under control. So it's very difficult for them to understand that, look, the newspapers are doing something and the government has nothing to do with it. So
and they're
for
even
them,
condemning it.
Exactly, and they are just separating everything. So it's not understandable. Here there is something which is really important, and I want to stress on this. It's not a clash between civilizations. There are fractures between two different understanding in each civilization. In the West, you have people say, look, freedom of speech, there is no compromission, and we have to get this. And it's us versus the Muslims. On the Islamic world, you have also Muslims dealing exactly in the same way. It's our truth, our beliefs against the Westerners. And I really think that in the middle, you have people ready to build bridges on understanding that. And what Irshad was saying, which is important, it's not only the Muslims, because the Western